Hello and welcome to Performance Check. My name is Rob, and this is going to be a casual chat with anyone watching live at the moment regarding a new setting that has been sort of in the back of my mind for a little while, and about essentially prepping a brand new home game that I'm going to be running. So first of all, I want to talk about the setting. It's an idea that I had last summer. And I actually did a video. If you go back onto my channel and you type in Performance Check The Last Dimension, you'll actually see me talking about a very, very similar concept. So what I'm going to do is I did post a thing, a kind of introductory kind of post to just the very, very brief, the essential things about what this setting is going to be. I posted it in the group. But I understand that some people on my channel aren't all in an absolute tabletop group, which you can go and join on Facebook, by the way. I would recommend that. But I'll just quickly read what I put there because it's a bit more succinct than if I were to just go off the cuff. So here we go. Imagine a multiverse, thousands of dimensions pressed together, one linked to the next, a chain of reality. An unimaginable and extra-dimensional force of destruction known as the Hunger surrounds the multiverse and is beginning to close in, eradicating all life in its path. One by one, dimensions fall. The only escape is to leap to the next world. Races of the multiverse are fleeing to its center, the last dimension. It is prime, it is ancient, it is unknown. A beautiful but broken place, with its history wiped clean, leaving only the ruins of what once was. Everything is new. Everything is a mystery. Bold new horizons await adventurers, traveling into the unknown, creating outposts, pathfinding, and dealing with territorial disputes from all of the cultures who have fled to this last bastion of existence. This is life's last chance. Take a first step into the final world, the last dimension. So this is really going to be like a blend of sci-fi and fantasy, and I hesitate to call it science fantasy because obviously that in itself is a genre, because this is still very much going to be a fantasy setting, but with just a few little science fiction quirks in there. I decided to come up with some pillars. If you watch me and Lloyd stream and talk about games and stuff and talk about world building, and I can't remember who originally came up with the idea, but essentially a good way of coming up with the setting is to have pillars that you stick to, ideals, conceits, themes that make the world that world, you know? Now, I I didn't copy the pillars into that, so bear with me 1 second whilst I bring them up. The first pillar, I believe, was actually life's last chance. I really like the idea of there being a uniting threat against the entirety of the world from the get-go. One that isn't a character, one that is just a force of nature that is a unstoppable wave of destruction. It's called the Hunger. Now, this is a balls-to-the-wall trope. The Hunger is, I mean, let's face it, if you look at things like Galactus or Unicron or the Nothing from the Never-Ending Story, you know, like, admittedly, Unicron and Galactus are characters, but they represent just unstoppable destruction. And that's kind of what I wanted to achieve with the Hunger. Essentially, this is vast, unstoppable, extra-dimensional force, which is forcing everyone from all the other dimensions to flee to the last dimension. And because of that, there's obviously a big problem. Is there going to be enough space for the rest of the for everyone, you know? And while it is the prime dimension, it is the largest dimension, that is still going to be a problem that hopefully player characters will have to deal with. Like, that will be like a running theme, is dealing with running into different races that are also trying to save themselves, and obviously putting themselves first, and how to deal with that problem. Let me see. I'm just finding the post whilst I stall for time. This is just going to be a really casual thing. I'm just going to have a bit of a chat, and I find talking about things like this is really helpful for me anyway. But if you have any questions and if you have any input, I'll be more than happy to hear and read about it in the chat. Here we are. So the pillars, life's last chance versus that. I like the idea that that kind of unites everyone within the setting, regardless of where they're from. Sci-fi meets fantasy. Now, the way that I'd like to, the best example I can think of, a big influence, probably around that same summer that I started thinking about this, I was playing Breath of the Wild, Zelda, on the Nintendo Switch. And the interesting thing about that game is that it is absolutely the quintessential Zelda fantasy setting, but there are these shrines and there's this technology that's present within the game that is unmistakably of a different technology level from everything else within the world. And that's something that I really like, and it is something that I'm going to shamelessly steal. I love the idea that and I'm kind of coming up with the concept of these things maybe called beacons or echo beacons or something like that, that are dotted around the landscape, that are essentially the ruins of a civilization that was once inhabited this dimension that are now no longer there for some reason. I love that particular blend. I think weirdly it works incredibly well with Breath of the Wild. And yeah, I'm sorry, like, this is ridiculous. Every time I come on a stream, everyone wants to talk to me, so I'm just gonna put that on airplane mode. There we go. So yeah, that's what I mean by sci-fi meets fantasy, rather than it being sci-fantasy. I like the idea of having a very optimistic setting as well, despite the fact that there is going to be this overwhelming presence. There is going to be hope in the face of annihilation, which is the third pillar. That I want it to be kind of like a bright, optimistic, and like I say, hopeful experience. I like the idea of, while, you know, this is the last dimension, it is all we've got. It is, or rather, it is all they've got, and, you know, they've got to make the best of it. And while obviously there'll be, you know, threats, and there'll be enemies, and there'll be battles, and there'll be disputes over who lives where and who takes what resources and things like that, I like the idea that there is sort of like that unifying feeling throughout the setting as well, that I think would be quite interesting to explore. And it then, you know, it writes itself in terms of the moral quandaries that you know, will come up in a situation like that. Matt Click actually commented on the actual post, and he said that he could imagine playing a game where you'd play a vanguard of your particular culture, entering the last dimension to find a sustainable home for your people before it's too late, or before other people show up. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what, you know, that's exactly the kind of thing that I want happening in the last dimension. Now, I mentioned before that this is going to be the setting that I'll be using for a home game that I'm going to be running. Now, with all of this said, and when all is said and done, the details of the setting for the session that I'm going to be running isn't going to be at the forefront, as it's the first session for, you know, the setting, but it is also the first session for the people who are going to be the players. I'm going to have two wonderful human beings who I get on with very well, playing their first game of D&D ever. So I also like the idea of not only it being a new world, but the fact that there's not really going to be any sort of setting baggage that they're going to have to know. They can just focus on like their characters and them making their own decisions and having a good time. The last dimension, while it has those elements that give it kind of like a personality, an identity rather, It's going to also be somewhere where you can run different tones of story, I think. Like I say, optimism and hope will be one of them, a big one, I think. And the reason I've chosen that is because I want this to be bright and I want this to be fun. I want this to be enjoyable for someone who, has never played and doesn't really know what to expect. I don't want to hammer home something dark and gritty and depressing for their first game. So that's another reason why I wanted to give The Last Dimension a try. So with all of that out of the way, I am now going to begin talking about prepping the session 1, essentially. There is not going to be a session 0. We're going to just jump straight in because as much as I think session 0 is fun and interesting and helpful for setting up a game, at the same time, I want their first experience of D&D to be they just walk in and then it just happens. I'm going to be helping them make their characters. In fact, to be honest with you, I think they're more than happy for me to, give them pre-gens perhaps, which I was kind of like, well, you kind of want to customize it. But then I thought to myself, well, no, like try and put yourself in their shoes. Like they've not played before. They don't know what to expect. They didn't really know any of the rules. They have a very, very, very vague idea of what the game is based on what I've told them. But they like the sound of it and they want to give it a go. So I'm like, let's just go with that then. I will make you some characters. You can obviously name the characters. You can choose the race and stuff. And I'll do all the technical fiddly bits like working out their armor class and picking their weapons. Or no, I'll let them pick their own weapons. You know what I mean? They get to choose stuff, but I'll do all the numbers or whatever. So with that said, we're going to have the first session, and while this looming these looming elements of the setting are going to be at play within the session, they're not going to be particularly important. I don't think it's necessary for that in someone's first game of D&D. What I do want is the following, and it's very, very simple. I want there to be some social interaction. I want them to have all the choice in the world. They can do whatever they like. Without giving them choice paralysis. That's the key. I want them to try out different things, and I want to give them a decent adventure which will end with a bang that will make them want to come back for more, essentially. Like, that's my job as someone who's introducing the hobby, is to make sure that it is presented in the best way possible, so they will not be able to wait until they roll those dice again. So I have already started work on the preparation for this, but I would absolutely love some input from those of you watching. That would be absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a Google Doc. And like I say, this is going to be very casual. This is just going to be me hanging out, talking some ideas over and writing them down. But I think it's kind of valuable to see the actual... when me and Lloyd did World Workshop, we talked about this a little bit. It's kind of valuable to see the way different people make their sessions, essentially. So hopefully this will be of use to someone. Hopefully people will find it interesting, and hopefully people like the concept of the setting and what I'm out to do. In the chat, Keith says, sounds like a GURPS premise. Oh, okay. I didn't know GURPS had a specific premise, or is a premise that would work in GURPS. Is that what you mean? I don't know. He also says, is the hunger just an evil, destructive force? Does it have a positive force to balance it, or something else that makes it not just evil? I have a rough idea, but I'm not going to go into that, to be honest, because like I was just mentioning before, while these elements are at play, this isn't going to be the focus of the session. Like the hunger is essentially like a big old trope that's driving the situation together. The hunger is basically there as a plot device to make the setting actually work, to make all of these people from different places have to inhabit the same world now and have to work together, and have to survive, and it's about overcoming your differences in the face whilst facing annihilation, which I think is an important message. Not that I'm saying you have to have you have to teach a lesson when you're running a game, but it's a good plot device. It's a good narrative to fall back onto. So I won't go into too much about the evil and destructive force known as the Hunger, but I'm sure I will do more streams about the Last Dimension. I'm sure I'll run some live games online with the setting in mind as well. I just thought it would be a good place to start for people, a fresh new world with no baggage. So, like I say, I'll bring up the Google Doc because I do have some notes that I've already made. The session 1. Okay. So the world, like I say, is new again. Something has happened where there's kind of been a reboot. The Last Dimension is ginormous. It's seemingly endless. It is a beautiful, albeit broken place. And I imagine that new settlements have been founded on the borders of the unknown, essentially. When the players are going to show up, there's already going to be like thriving communities. They're not going to be the first people in, for example. There are going to be people that have already arrived, already set up their own sort of territories and towns and settlements and things like that. Because while the overall idea of the setting sounds like a desperate exodus to the Last Dimension, I imagine that that's something that would happen over the course of many, 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 many years. So, it gives me room to breathe, in particular with this first session. If I was going to run this online with some more experienced players, then sure, I would start with the Exodus, people arriving there for the first time. But like I say, I don't want any baggage for this game. This is just the backdrop of what essentially is going to be classic D&D, but with hopefully a twist that will not make it seem like ordinary. Both of them know quite a lot about fantasy storytelling. They're both Lord of the Rings fans and like that. And I want to make sure that when they arrive, they see something that they recognize, but is also a little bit different and catches their attention. So with all of that said, so new settlements will essentially have been founded upon the unknown territories, and there's going to be vast wildernesses, that's filled with wonders and like dreadful dangers at the same time, that I suppose you could argue are kind of alien in nature, and maybe that's where we start introducing like D&D monsters. Maybe the D&D monsters don't exist in any other dimension. Maybe beholders only exist in the Last Dimension. Like, I haven't really gone into that too much, to be honest, but I like the idea that there are some maybe indigenous creatures that were always in the Last Dimension, or I might even create my own. I could even create my own monster. I like the sound of that, actually, because I like the idea that even gnolls and even dragons and giants and titans have to make the journey as well. There are going to be all sorts of D&D races within this. Like, I'm sure the Gith will show up. Like, I'm sure I'm not going to put any kind of bar on what you can be in this game, I don't think, because I like the idea that there's going to be like overwhelming variety amongst the people that are trying to survive, the diversity of life that's desperately clinging on. I keep distracting myself, but this is helpful because, like I say, talking about this really helps me get a clear picture in my mind with what I'm doing. But like I say, so little is basically going to be known about the lost civilization that once ruled before. Like I say, it's going to be kind of like the mysterious shrines that you see in Breath of the Wild that have that weird technology about them. And they're going to be dotted all around the place. Like I say, what did I say that I was going to call them? Beacons or something like that, maybe. And maybe they have something to do with the hunger, and maybe in the future there's something to do with them that will maybe prevent it. Who knows? Maybe the key to saving all of reality is within the Last Dimension, or maybe there's no hope. So we'll see. I keep rambling, but I'm excited about this one. I'm really excited to run this at some point. So all of these like lost artifacts and these ruins and stuff stand vigil over whatever that civilization was, whatever they left behind. Pardon me, need a drink. It's been a long day today. So the ruins essentially are going to be like the dungeons and stuff. They're going to hide great secrets and wondrous treasures and stuff like that. Now, while this setting is going to be, I think, a breath of fresh air in terms of like giving standard D&D a bit of a twist, at the same time, I am going to be relying on some of the tropes because they're not going to be tropes for these players because they've never played before. And that is one advantage that I have. So I am going to drop in a bunch of tropes just so they get like a definitive D&D experience. If I get all the tropes out of the way in one session, I will then be forced to be a bit more cunning and a bit more like you know what I mean? Like they'll then know that they're tropes like for the next time. So I'm also kind of teaching them to be a bit savvy when it comes to playing games and stuff as well. Hopefully, we'll see. So they're going to be in this frontier town. I've decided, or rather, there is this frontier town. I don't know if they're going to start in the town, or maybe starting in the town would be too easy. Maybe I could start them off with something a bit energetic, something that gets the mechanics sort of flowing immediately. Maybe they could begin trying to get to this town. Now, the working title of the town is Due Course. And I don't know if that's lame or if that works. And by dew, it's DEW, like fresh dew upon the grass in the morning. Because I thought new dawn, morning dew course sounds adventure-y maybe. So this town, essentially, and it's going to lie on the mouth of this great river that flows into a lake, the Looking Glass Lake, or whatever. I haven't decided on the name yet. And that lake is going to be a source of trade for neighboring settlements of predominantly humans. I'm going to say humans, maybe some half elves, maybe some dwarves. And that's essentially where they've settled. They've got this entire the entire surrounding part of the lake nailed down, and they can trade between themselves, and they can look after each other with that network that's set up there. So it's kind of got a logic to it, sort of like that's where they're going to be. That's sort of like the hub for the meantime. And essentially I want it to be quite a thriving place. Like they've arrived at the last dimension like a couple of 100 years ago, whatever, and the town is thriving, like it's a symbol of prosperity. And it's kind of like a vigil. It's a frontier town because if you go beyond it, that's when you go into the unknown regions. You go into the darkness. You go into the places where people haven't been able to map because it's just insanely dangerous, right? So the two of them are going to arrive at this town. Whether they go through an action introduction or not, I haven't decided. Like, and for those of you that don't know my games, who watch my stuff, you'll know that I do like to have a punchy start, like whether it be like a dramatic, like social encounter or like a straight into a combat or whatever. But I don't think I'm going to do this with brand new players. I'm going to like slowly sort of just introduce them to the fact that they've got to roll dice to determine what happens, you know. So something simple, perhaps, to begin with. But I want to leave the town completely open to them because the number one thing I think that players need to understand, first of all, maybe even before the rolling the die, is the actual act of, you know, being in a role-playing game, like knowing that you have to talk to the DM and ask them questions and ask the characters that the DM is playing questions, you know. So I think it's quite important to set that up. I think it's important to be to have that pulled out right at the beginning. You're in a town, and I suppose eventually I'm going to have them be invited by I came up with a character name, Kada Silverwise. So Kada is going to be inviting them to do a mission, okay? Because I want them to basically do a, you know, standard D&D quest, which will like kickstart the adventure, I suppose. I'm just going to quickly bring a few things up here. Oh wow, we've got quite a lot of people in. We have Locrius, my man. Hey man, how's it going? Locrius says killer concept for the setting, my brother. Thanks, man. My boy Yarl DM Lloyd himself says Gith Yankee. Yes, the Gith. Chris says blue dudes confirmed. I can confirm that there are blue dudes. Hail the Lich Queen, says Lloyd. Mass Effect vibes with ancient shrines. Yeah, I guess in a way it is kind of a little bit like Andromeda, even though I didn't like Andromeda, the game. I did like the kind of precursor to it, and I have mentioned that they are kind of pathfinding. Yeah, I didn't actually think of that. That's a very good call. It is a lot like that. Scrap this game and run a Gith campaign. No, I don't want to, because I know it's been done excellently by Andrew Knapp, and that's his for life. Keith Chamley says this sounds like a pretty cool concept. Will running it in D&D limit it? How will you handle things like laser guns, spaceship pilots, etc.? Well, no, Keith, there aren't going to be laser guns and spaceship pilots. When I say that it's sci-fi meets D&D, like I want the vibe of a sci-fi. Like jumping from different dimensions feels to me a bit more sci-fi than it is fantasy, even though obviously there is the multiverse in D&D. But I like when it comes to that, like it's sci-fi with new races meeting each other for the first time and things like that, and traveling between I don't know, it just seems to me like that. And there's like an ancient sort of technology that is present. Doesn't mean that is going to be laser guns and spaceships though. It's just going to have that kind of twist. If we go back to the example with Breath of the Wild, there are like mechanical beings that are powered by energy, you know, like, and fire lasers and stuff like, or I suppose you just said, I did say there are no laser guns. Maybe they are laser guns. Maybe like laser breath weapons and things like that. Like it seems a bit more organic, maybe. I don't know. Locris says Gith for life. Oh my God, they are just talking about Gith. Well, thank you very much for your contributions, both of you. I will take that on board. Anyway, where was I? So the two adventurers have been drawn to due course. They will explore the town and be invited by Cada Silverwise to meet at a tavern. Maybe I do the tavern trope. Why not? Let's think of a cool tavern name. Because like I said, I am going to be typing some of this stuff out. Let's call it, for now, these are subject to change. Sparks Den. There we go. Sparks Den. Okay. And they're very, very outspoken people, and I'm quite confident that they'll roleplay well. Like they will be fine with that, I think. So I think maybe if they're treated to like I can explain to them at the beginning of the game that they've been traveling for days, they have no supplies left, they're exhausted, they finally reach this border town, and then they're instantly treated to find food and drink by this Cada Silverwise, who essentially is trying to butter them up to agree to go on this nuts quest. And I think I have like rough ideas about what the quest could be. But if you have quest ideas, then by all means, whack them into the chat. It would be cool to have like a few options for them to pick, maybe. But at the same time, I know that when it's your first game, a bit more of a guiding hand sometimes is necessary. So I might just say, look, we're going to go and do this mission, just so they get like more of a feel of what happens when you're playing D&D. So the idea that I thought of was that they have to travel to. I haven't thought of like a name for the forerunning progenitor race that was there before, whatever, like the Protheans from Mass Effect, like Lloyd said, or Forerunners from Halo. But whatever that is, they have to travel to a progenitor ruin, which could be one of these beacons or one of these echo beacons, right? Because from within its depths Dark powers have emerged, of course. Of course, dark powers have emerged from it, because, why not? Like I say, no tropes are barred in this particular game. Dark powers have emerged from it and are corrupting the surrounding lands. So maybe this beacon, whatever energy that is inside it, is being, manipulated in some way. Maybe there are things out there that understand how they work. Maybe there's more to be learned from this. Maybe it would be wise to understand a bit more about these relics, a bit more about this weird alien technology that is lying out in the wastes, waiting for people to find and manipulate. So they are going to be commanded, look, please go to the Echo Beacon and investigate and solve the problem. We sent a party of militia and volunteers already, so you will be able to follow their trail, and if you find them, maybe help them, but they've been gone for a while and haven't come back. You see how I'm ticking all the boxes here? So there's like a party of militia that have gone off, and of course we all, I mean, we know what's happened to them, right? I mean, so I like the idea then that once they're given a mission and they're given a bit of role playing, like I'm gonna have maybe one of my NPCs be a bit argumentative to like push the role play a bit more. Maybe like halfway through the session, I'll be like kind of like be someone who isn't as polite as Kata Silverwise, someone who's a little bit more of an asshole, to show them that, while I'm running this game, there are antagonistic like people in this game. Not everyone is out to help them. You should treat this like you were out on your own in a post-apocalyptic wasteland or the last dimension or whatever. So yeah, let's put that in. In fact, let's do it whilst they're traveling, because then they will have that feeling of vulnerability. They won't have the town to fall back on. So I've come up with a few things that they're going to be, traveling past. And I will then add that they're going to meet an antagonistic NPC. An exile. Someone who's exiled from the town, maybe. That would be pretty cool, because then they'd be super bitter that, he'll be like, where have you come from? And they'll be like, oh, we've just come from due course, or whatever I call it. And they'll be like, that fucking place, they exiled me, like, what the hell? And make him, like, or make her, or whoever it turns out to be, a threat to them. Maybe we'll see. Let's see, what could this antagonistic exile be? Maybe I could introduce one of the races. Maybe he could be a Gith. Maybe. Then again, I think it might be easier if I just involve the base races of D&D, just so they get like an understanding of what's out there. Maybe a tiefling. I am going to allow tieflings in this game, I think, which is weird for me, because like I like them to be special, but at the same time, everyone who's anyone will be coming to this place in search of sanctuary. So I guess there's no reason why tieflings wouldn't be there. So we'll see. I'll come back to that. I don't want to waste too much time on that. I know there's going to be a treacherous exile out there on the journey somewhere. Their journey is going to lead them across the windswept plains, so I can talk to them about traveling and and how are you going to be like looking after yourselves out there in the wilderness? Like, are you going to hunt? Are you going to like cook things? Are you going to light fires at night? Then they're going to go through a place called the Valley of Hidden Eyes, which I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what's in the Valley of Hidden Eyes, other than, I guess, Hidden Eyes. Just a name. And maybe something will happen in there, or maybe I'll be focused and get them to their objective quicker, maybe. I don't know. They're then going to have to reach a precarious peak on which the beacon sits. And maybe that's where they meet the exile, perhaps when they're in this sort of like barren wasteland part of the world. I imagine it'd be quite lush and green. This is the thing. Like, I like the idea of it being high fantasy. There's sort of magic, but more planar magic than arcane, if that makes any sense. Although I suppose magic comes from a different dimension anyway. So, interesting. like I say, I'm not going to worry about this too much because this is their first session, and I kind of want it to still have the classic feeling of D&D in it. If they probably won't know, I'm not going to like drop too much of that information on them. So as far as they're concerned, they're going to be like in this other world, and they're going to know that they're new here, and then they're going to know why they're new here. But yeah, oh, it's interesting. It's interesting. There's a lot of options, but I know I have to hold back. I don't want to drown them with too much information. I don't want to burden the game with that. Um, I just like the idea of the setting excites me, and hopefully that will be conveyed to them. We'll see. So then they reach Echo Beacon, or the Echo Beacon. I think I'll have a trap, you know, just a simple trap, maybe a tripwire. Although it'll be a trip laser instead of a tripwire, it'll be a trip laser. So like light, like light, hard light. That's what it's called. So on entering Echo Beacon, a trap will they may trigger a trap. There we go. They may trigger trap. And then there are many technological threats. Technological threats based off hard light. Okay. So they might trigger the trap, they might not. I will ask for a perception check. I mean, I'll ask them for a perception check, but I'll add it there just in case I forget. Perception check. Like I say, very, very casual stream. Just going to talk this through with you guys. Maybe that trap can trigger something where they can't get out. So they come through, and then the door can seal, or something can collapse and they fall deeper into it, or something that will that make them think you're gonna have to solve this now. Like you're now trapped. You have to solve this yourself. So after sort of like drip feeding them throughout the entirety of the game, once they reach the objective, that's when they've got to start thinking for themselves a bit more. Obviously, I'm not going to be mean and do like ridiculous stuff to them that they won't understand, like save or die. But yeah, I like the look of that. I like the sound of that. I'm getting like quite a vivid picture of it in my mind, which, to be honest, is kind of mostly what I need because I can wing a lot of this. But I like doing this too, to be fair. So yeah, I like the idea that there's going to be a trap that's going to prevent them from turning back, because then there's like, and again, a trope, but it's a trope for a reason. Now, I like the idea that the militia that were sent there have been enthralled by this corrupting energy. So now they are essentially going to be undead. Like, I want there to be like a classic D&D threat, undead. That's going to be great. And they know what zombies are. I don't have to explain what a zombie is to them. And I think it's a nice change from it being kobolds or goblins. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's either kobolds, goblins, or undead. And undead I can do more with. I can involve the militia party that went missing. They are now undead creatures that are going to try and fight them. So there will be a dramatic battle. Maybe once a trap is triggered, so the alarms are going off and hard light technology is moving around and stuff, and then they have a fight and stuff. That'll be pretty rad. So they're like undead thralls, controlled by the darkness, and they're going to attack without mercy. I'm going to have a look at the chat whilst I have a sip of tea. Oh man, I missed a lot. Ben Buckner says something like Stargate. I guess they must have gates to get to the different dimensions. I like the idea of there being gates. I didn't really watch an awful lot of Stargate, to be honest. I liked the concept of it though. Jeff says, I too have a contribution to make. Have you considered something like GIF? They'll be in there, all right? Then Matner says, where the meeting of the different levels of technology and cultures meet good and bad effect. Where the meeting of these different levels of technology and cultures meet to good and bad effect. I think I know what you mean. I think I guess it could be a good or a bad thing, right? Maybe I'm just to be honest, like I say, I'm very tired. Long day. Keith says, I feel out of the loop. I have no idea what Gith is. Gith Yankee, a outsider race. Mika has said that. Or Micah, sorry if I said that wrong. Has already answered that. Jeff says, to be honest, I don't know too much about the Gith other than skimming the Monster Manual. Just wanted to troll Rob. It's all good. Jarl says, quest, they're given a quest to scout out one of these ancient ruins, and when they get there, they step through a portal into the astral plane where they see Gith. Ben Butner, maybe the beacons are ancient terraforming relics that are activated when the creatures that sent first sent the beacons are planning to visit colonize. Maybe that is very close to Mass Effect Andromeda, though, because isn't that what those things are? They have to activate the terraforming relics to make new homes for themselves. I don't know. I'm thinking personally. I'm thinking that the beacons are there to maybe are some defense against the hunger. Maybe, I don't know. But then again, I quite like the idea of there not being a defense against it and everyone's living on borrowed time. I'll be a bit vague about it, to be honest. And I won't decide on this stream. I'm going to have to go away and flesh this setting out more. But Keith says, the way you describe the tech sounds like Dwemer tech from the Elder Scrolls games. Yes, so a bit more like that, like mechanical and like there's something, maybe not steam powered, but like it feels alien and it feels different. It feels like it's from a different place. Yar says, quest, livestock have been going missing from a nearby town and they have to investigate. Clues lead them to a cave in the wilderness where they find this weird crashed Gith spaceship. Gith. Locurus Planetoid says, I feel like Nothics in the Valley of Hidden Eyes would be creepy as hell. Nothics. I know what you mean. That would be creepy as hell. I'm not sure I like them. Wait, am I thinking of the right creature? Let me quickly Google them to make sure that I'm thinking of the right creature. You see, we've got Locurus over here. If you don't know Locurus and you're on my channel, then you're a heretic. Let's see, Nothics. Locurus does some amazing monster videos over on Locurus Planetoid, and you should check. Oh, it's those. Oh, that's a great idea, Locurus. Yes. For those of you watching that don't know, yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know, but I recognize them, but I didn't realize that's what they were called. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to do that, Locurus. I will use Nothics in this game. Maybe they won't attack. Maybe they'll just watch them and be really creepy and stuff because, like, maybe, maybe. Oh no, but they'll be cool if they have like a fight. I'll just level them down. I'll put that in there. Through the Valley of Hidden Eyes. Nothics lie in wait. Thank you very much, man. I will definitely do that. Cool. We have Nothics. I like that, and they are kind of alien looking as well. So that's kind of helpful to sort of drive that home a little bit more. Okay. Definitely creepy. The valley could also be a gibbering Maldor or a beholder breeding area. Jesus Christ. They're going to be level 1, by the way. Like, So I don't want to throw too much at them. I want them to be level 1, so they have very simple things to pay attention to. The RDM says, deep in the heart of the ancient place, they find a riddle. They find a strange terminal powered by magic of some kind, maybe a riddle. And then when they solve it, it opens an ancient tomb, and inside a Githorian. Nothic stalkers, creepy as fuck. I agree. So, okay, so they're in there, and they're gonna have to fight to end the darkness that's plaguing the Echo Beacon or whatever. And some of those suggestions in the chat, even though Lloyd's messing about with gifts, like those are some really good things that I can do. Like I like the idea of there being something very simple, like livestock being missing, stuff like that. Like, so they have the option to go and look at these things as well. Like I want them to understand that this is like freedom of choice. You can do whatever you want. If they want, you know. But I will also like try and be like, look, there's this quest here that's kind of like the main the main quest. And I would only ever do that because I want them to just do an adventure to see what it's like. So I think right at the end, they've got to find some way where they can stop the threat, maybe power down the beacon so it then starves whatever evil force is feeding from it. There we go. They have to shut it down to starve the evil force. There you go. They must shut down the beacon to starve the evil force, whatever the evil force is. Starve the evil force is controlling the beacon. And then we definitely have to have this. So after exploring the beacon, they'll find a route to the very top of the spire, the beacon on the top of the spire, where it will be revealed that none other than Kada Silverwise has been trapping people within the beacon to turn them into thralls so she can take over this part of the last dimension for her people. And she's using undead to do it. So then you've got that other trope, which is the betrayal of the person that gives you the quest at the beginning. Which is great. I will definitely do that. I don't even care. I love it because then this seemingly nice person is actually like, fuck you. And they'll hate her. They will hate her. So they'll really feel good when they kill her. Or defeat her, however they wish to deal with her. And yeah, so they'll defeat her and I guess then be rewarded from... Oh god, how are they going to get a reward if the quest goes down? I'll have to introduce another NPC that will be like, you you helped us, you did this. I will put a note there. And there we go, we've got a session. I mean, obviously I'll do more work on it, but I mean that's the long and short of it, isn't it? Where did I say, wherever I mention Kada Silverwise, I will have to say they'll meet someone else like in the town. Maybe the head of the militia, who's like, my men went on a mission sent by Kada Silverwise, and they didn't come back. Damn Kada Silverwise and her meddling. They also meet the head of the militia. Yeah, militia, who complains that his men have been missing for a long time. They are invited, and we know the rest. I think that's all right for a first bash. I mean, yeah, that's weird. But I quite like that there'll be that little twist. Like, she'll be like, look, the reason I sent you here is because I wanted to convert some actual adventurers into undead and not militia. I want people to lead my undead force, and that's you two because you're super rad. And then that'll make them feel good. They'll be like, ah, you wanted to convert us to being undead, which would be funny. Keith Shawnee says, oh, that's not to do with it. It means, yeah, your moderators. Locris and Lloyd are the guardians at the gates of performance check. They're those statues in Neverending Story. If you try and run through, they just shoot lasers out their eyes and just blast you to hell. Or, you know, they drown your horse in a swamp. Lloyd says, on a serious note, some cool CR1 monsters, animated armor as a robot. For Keen or whatever from Dark Sun as aliens. Oh, yes. No, I know what you mean. Yep. And of course, Gith. I'll tell you what, Lloyd, I'm just gonna copy that straight off your comments. CR1 monsters, animated armors, robot, Thirkeen or whatever. Yep. I'm just stealing that, man. I'm just having that because those are good suggestions. I like the idea of animated armor being constructs, like servitors from, well, not exactly from 40k, but I won't put that in the session notes. I'll put like example encounters. So if they go off the cuff and off somewhere else, I will have other things that I can use against them. Perfect. So I think that's going to be about it. I didn't want to make this a long one, really. I just wanted to introduce the setting and kind of just riff about it, to be honest, guys. Like, and this has been helpful talking to you guys because I've been able to, yeah, get it on paper at least and have a clear idea of what I'm going to do. Locris says, what if the asshole tiefling becomes an ally? Good idea, Locris. Locris. Let's put that down. A potential ally. How could he become a potential ally? Maybe he will get stuck in there with them? No, I want it to just be them. Maybe he's out there waiting for them and is like, I've brought help. He runs away and gets help. That's the most anticlimactic ending of a D&D encounter. Someone runs to get help for you. Where did I put it? The exile. Where is he? Where is the exile? I definitely wrote it down. Okay, I'll put it at the bottom. And, well, I'll find it later. Tiefling. Exile is actually ally. His interests align with theirs. And whether that be survival, whether that be something to do with a beacon, or just making a name for themselves, or getting money, I don't know. I will work that out another time. But that's a really good idea, Locus. I'm really, really pleased that you mentioned that. Yeah, and then we're talking about moderation powers. So, yeah, you know what? I'm going to wrap it up there. So, like I said, this is the essentially the very, very brief introduction to the setting of the Last Dimension. I'm obviously going to flesh it out a bit more, but I'm excited about running stuff in it. It's going to be pretty interesting, and I will definitely come on line sometime, and I'll do like a games debrief, and I'll talk about how it went and stuff. I'll probably come up with some more ideas for quests in the meantime, because I've got like a week before I'm going to run it, I think, or at least a couple of days. I don't know when they want to do it. Soon. I know it's soon. But I'll come back and I'll let you know how it goes. The first step in the final world. So that just leaves me to say, well, thank you ever so much for watching. That's been really helpful to me. So thank you for helping me out, for those of you in the chat. And yeah, I'll tell you how it goes. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard.